Talk about movies with you. Talk about movies with you. We'll learn about behind the scenes and deeper meanings, 'cause this is just a film review. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Film Recommendations. Today's film is the film Hardwired that came out in 2009, starring Val Kilmer, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Michael Ironside. What's interesting about this movie is that it basically, if you watch it, it feels like it's the pilot for a television series. And I would guess not with Cuba Gooding Jr. as the protagonist. The film has a simple premise. Corporations have kind of taken over society and are running things um, instead of having people's governments. And there's advertising everywhere, quite literally everywhere. Gatorade has an advertisement on the Taj Mahal. Pepsi has an advertisement on the moon where they turned it into the Pepsi symbol. And this is an old motif in science fiction where advertising revenue simply generates so much money and profit for the company that they end up spending ridiculous amounts of money in order to create these advertisements. Just look at the Super Bowl, for instance. Anyway, so the main evil company is called Hope Industries, which of course they just kind of pulled out of their fanny. The writing in this movie is very schlocky, but I can see why the actors, the really big name actors, agreed to do it. What's disappointing about it, and they point this out on the Wikipedia article for the movie Hardwired, as well as in the Rotten Tomatoes article for it, page for it rather, is that Val Kilmer on the cover is shown to be a much younger, much more fit Val Kilmer, and it's actually apparently a picture taken from another movie. I actually want to say it was probably taken from like The Saint or something. But it might have also been taken from one of his other earlier roles. But I seem to remember The Saint being his last action role where he was really young and in good shape. More so in good shape, because when he's in good shape, he's a very great leading man. Unfortunately, in recent years, he's let himself really go. But I'm one to talk. Anyway, so as I was saying, the film premise is very simple. There's advertising all over the world. The corporations have kind of taken over because they've bailed out the government so many times. And what ends up happening is they implant a microchip in Cuba Gooding Jr.'s brain to make him see advertising actors, spokespersons, as if they were there in real life, basically turning him into a schizophrenic. And the visions only become more and more prevalent the longer you go without buying the product. And it's basically like if you had pop-ups in your brain, which is really a disturbing thought. This whole concept of advertising was actually explored also in the television series Futurama, in the episode in which Fry acquires acquires a vast fortune because he was away for 1,000 years. Hit the money in his bank account just saved up with interest until he had millions of dollars. It's called A Fishful of Dollars, now that I can think of it. And I want to say that it's from the second season, possibly the third. I honestly, all the seasons of Futurama blur together. But anyway, In Hardwired, Cuba Gooding Jr. starts seeing these spokespeople, um, advertising things like watches and gum, and it won't stop until he gets it. And um, if he starts to ask why or inquire as to why it's coming up, he gets pain sent to him. And if he's tempted to reveal what's happening, they're watching him, and they'll make his head explode. And they show this happening in the um, opening scene of the movie, so that you're wondering, oh, what was causing that? It's I won't say it's terribly written, because if it had been slightly better written, it would have it would have been a better movie. But also, if they had just a little bit better budget um, for things in terms of special effects, because the special effects look like they're made for TV level special effects. Even like the names on this one card that's handed to them. This guy hands him a business card, and it looks like the print. It looks like they used a blank card and then just inserted the text on that. It's like, how hard is it to just print something on a business card for the movie? And at one point in the same scene, they have like an image in the background, and they make it flicker and give a noise uh, to show that it's electronic, when in reality a television like that, a flat screen television that would be doing that, you wouldn't notice that, and you wouldn't want the audience to know that it's that until they turn around and see the face of the bad guy played by Val Kilmer. So this whole movie, unfortunately, uses a lot of insert effects rather than just having things on the actual screens of the thing. And it looks inserted because the colors are not blend. They don't blend well with uh, the colors of the shots, so it ends up looking like well, the opening sequences where they have the logos on everything make it all just look like it was done with Photoshop by a rank amateur, unfortunately. Um, yeah, so it's disappointing. But I will say that most actors care a lot about how the film ends. And the film does have a well-written ending, uh, where there is some suspense. And it has an interesting message. So I do give Michael Ironside, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Val Kilmer credit for being in this movie, because the way that the ending was written, it felt a lot like The Matrix. It felt a lot like Johnny Mnemonic, or or even Inception to some degree, but largely like Johnny Mnemonic or The Matrix in terms of um, kind of where it takes you by the end. Um, and there are some mysteries to solve. Unfortunately, at the end they have Cuba Gooding Jr. kind of standing there, um, you know, defiantly uh, looking to face the evil of the corporation, and take down its head, um, its head guy, who is just a still picture of that guy from Millennium, who also played Bishop in the Alien series. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. If I look it up while I'm um, while I'm making while I'm editing this, I'll uh, I'll try to put it in the comments or something. Anyway, so this so at the end it's like, well, our quest goes on. And it's like, okay, so you're looking to make a television series out of this film, and you've got big name actors that are going to be probably replaced by uh, by crappy television actors or maybe mediocre television actors. Uh, someone who kind of can play the part of Cuba Gooding Jr.'s role. They killed off Michael Ironside's character. They killed off Val Kilmer's character. Maybe Cuba Gooding Jr. was going to sign to do the series, but as it is, this was a straight to DVD release, unfortunately. But I have seen stranger things happen. They made a theatrical release of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and then went on to produce uh, a full television series now in its umpteenth season on Cartoon Network. Um, Hardwired is currently available to watch on Crackle.com, but you can also buy it on Amazon for $7.50 at the current price. Um, you could probably also get it on eBay for not very much. It's not a movie I would recommend buying. I would recommend watching it for free or maybe renting it for a night from Redbox. It is a bad movie, so don't sit down and watch it expecting it to be a good movie. It will be bad, but it won't be painfully bad, as with some of the films I've reviewed on this series. Uh, you'll find that Val Kilmer, even though he his hair is like all over the place, on the cover they show it very short, and in the movie they didn't just have him. It wasn't just long, but it was actually like sideshow Bob long and out there crazy. And he's trying to look like some kind of genius, but they gave him these 1980s giant wireframe glasses uh, and put him in a suit and had him, crossing his fingers like, oh yes, I'm a computer genius and an evil one at that. So we are going to use this system in order to make you want to acquire things. And the wealthy will be able to have their brains upgraded. In the movie, on the computer generated images that they project onto um, the screens for the special effects, which again looks cheesy and fake. Um, they have the chip looking a little bit ovaloid with little uh, circuit uh, paths coming out of it, kind of like a bug, only also like a microchip, um, like a memory chip. If you've ever seen those inside a computer or a computer processor, if you've ever seen the little bits that come off of that, little metal bits. I don't know exactly they're called because I'm not a computer technician type guy. Anyway, but they don't show the chip when it's being actually inserted. They don't show it very much when it's being inserted in Cuba Gooding Jr.'s thing, and they actually don't even show them doing the surgery. What they do is, and it's really cheesy too, they they have them actually use a drill to make a hole in the back of just plain skin to insert the chip. And I'm like, how about no? Because no doctor ever would do that to someone's neck. Ever. Because you have muscles and nerve endings there that are very delicate. How about they would, and plus they show it at the back of the brain, and yet they're going to make an incision at the very back of the neck, like um, right where it touches your spine or something. And then what do they do? But they put just a few simple stitches over this hole that's been drilled into your skin. I'm like, what? So anyway, so the surgery scene is cheesy, but the microchip that they show you literally looks like a hex nut um, that you would buy in a hardware store with some little metal bits attached to it, bent to look like a computer chip. And I'm just like, come on. You know, they hold it with a pair of tweezers and they show it kind of in shadow with, backlit and everything so that you can't really notice that it's a hex nut attached to some metal uh, wire. It's just sad because if you're gonna spend your money on at least one prop, you want it to be the microchip that starts the whole process, and you want it to look like the microchip that's in the simulation, the graphic that they made. So, yeah, there's you're looking at one thing which shows where they intended for it to go, and then where it actually ended up going was bad. Apparently, according to the Wikipedia article, the film was actually shot on the same sets as Watchmen after Watchmen had been filmed, of course. And I find that um, appropriate and at the same time disappointing because I did not like Watchmen. As I remember, the Watchmen was shot up in Vancouver, and I like a lot of stuff that's shot up in Vancouver, but it explains a lot. Uh, the sets for Watchmen were not very good, in all honesty. Uh, they were okay, but not very good. And then they used some additional sets that were so-so. And yeah, they looked like made for TV sets. So they used recycled sets, which I can't rip on them too much because if you watched any commentary about The Matrix, uh, then you'll know that uh, they actually used sets from Dark City to uh, for the first Matrix film. Um, and if you watch the Dark City review, I'm sure I mention it there too, because I find that to be a really cool factoid that they use some of the sets. But aside from all that, the fact that they reuse sets from the Watchmen movie um, shows just how low budget this movie was. Apparently, it was made for $5 million, and yet they were able to get stars like Val Kilmer and Michael Ironside, who recently was in uh, the X-Men First Class movie in kind of a very small role, really, as a sea captain. And he just filled the role nicely. But in Hardwired, I want to say he actually does a really good job there too. Um, and I can see why he did that role there too. I can see why the actors chose to be in the movie when they had to play the parts that they did. Val Kilmer has a great villain role. Cuba Gooding Jr. has a great hero role. A rebellion movement, because this is a very cyberpunk movie, so it's a little bit outdated, but um, in terms of like how much cyberpunk is kind of passe to a lot of folk, I don't care. I think cyberpunk has a good message. Anyway, so there's a resistance movement, kind of like in Johnny Mnemonic and in The Matrix, in which uh, Cuba Gooding Jr. becomes, they modify his implant so that they can give him information uh, to use to help fight. Because apparently he was in Army Special Forces. They put that right in there. Just, oh, he was Army Special Forces. But when he wakes up from the surgery, he has no memory of who he is. So again, kind of ripping off Johnny Mnemonic, um, except that Johnny Mnemonic wasn't um, Army Special Forces. He was just it was Johnny Mnemonic was almost a secret agent movie. Um, a movie of cloak and dagger and intrigue, and it had a similar motif where the corporation was evil and everything. And it's a good motif. It works. I generally do agree that corporations are evil, and now that they're considered people, it's really funny that that it seems like they can own property. So why couldn't they own landmarks like the Taj Mahal or the moon or something, or at least you know put up advertisements or whatever. But I don't like the decision that in the U.S. corporations are people, as a lot of people don't. Um, and even recently, a presidential candidate for the Republican Party, Mitt Romney, said that corporations are people. And I'm just like, if you think that, then you are not going to get my vote. Anyway, way off base here. Way off topic. Not off base, though. But it's a motif in it's a leitmotif even the in cyberpunk stories that a corporation is all powerful, they control the tech, and because you need the tech, they can control you. They control the information that you receive, and it's true if you look around. GE owns NBC, Disney owns ABC, and I think Viacom owns CBS. I don't know. It's all there is no clean, distinct body separate from it. Uh, the government controls NPR uh, to a certain degree. They just kind of fund it and let them do whatever. And anyway, that's beside the point. So uh, it's it has a certain amount of humor at certain points, but I wouldn't say it's amazing or great. It's not an overwhelmingly good movie. Like I said, it feels like it was just made to be a made for TV pilot to a movie, but they got such big name stars to play the parts that they ended up releasing it on DVD. And I don't know if it ever aired on television. I looked at the Wikipedia article, and it didn't say that it ever aired on television. Um, And plus, to air on television, you actually need sponsors, and I don't think anyone would sponsor this, especially since the message is that advertising is evil. Um, what's funny is I watched on Crackle, which requires that you watch advertisements in order to watch it. So I'm watching a movie with advertisements that says the advertisements are evil. And of course, I actually don't watch the advertisements. I don't even pay attention to them. So, yeah, go figure. But part of the point of the film is that they need to actually motivate people to go out and buy certain products with these brain implants. So if they can cause the people pain or cause them upset by shoving holographic people in their face and control the way they think with these implants, then uh, you can't just ignore all the advertising everywhere. And it's also a bit like the film Idiocracy. Um, but honestly, I just have to say that I like the message of the film, but I don't like the execution of the film. I like the story of the film, but I don't like the absolute ending of the film. They actually bothered to have that our quest goes on ending with uh, characters named things like, well, his two assistants are named Punk Red and Punk Blue, and they're brother and sister, and they were at the college protesting, and then they went rogue and dropped out of college and everything, which is a really great message for the kids. Drop out of college and so that you can rebel against the system by using uh, technology to uh, fight the evil corporations instead of working within the system to change things. So I don't know. Um, Again, it's a cyberpunk motif. Um, it's just one of those things. I thought that it was really cheesy the way that they colored the punk blue, who's the boy, um, the brother. They colored his hair bright blue, instead of like they did with the sister, where they colored her hair black with red streaks. So just from an aesthetic point of view, it would have been nice if they went with the same kind of deal, where they colored his hair black with blue streaks, or even blonde with blue streaks. But instead, it just all ended up blue. So, it would have been nice to have like the contrast with the similarity as well. I don't know. That's me. Um, it feels like it would have been better made as a comic book or even an animated show, because then you wouldn't have met up with the problems inherent in the production, where you have to have physical sets and things. And then actually, if they had made it into a Flash animated show, the budget would have been lowered because you wouldn't have had to have physical sets. You just would have needed to have animators working on it, and it could have just been, you know, a small group of animators producing the show, because Flash is very versatile for that kind of thing. And you could have just had the actors doing voices for the characters, and it probably would have taken off phenomenally. And you could have easily gotten it made into a series that way. But that's neither here nor there. That's woulda, coulda, shoulda. As it is, the series or the show, the movie is like outdated in its motifs, and yet poignant because of recent events. Like I said, the declaration that corporations are citizens, the Citizens United case, as it's more familiar now. It's yeah, it's a strange phenomenon, and I know a lot of people who tell me, "Oh yeah, well they've already taken over, and it's hopeless." And maybe it is, maybe it doesn't. I don't care. You know, if it is, then it's probably too late. And the only way to get out of the catch 22 is to just leave it all behind. The all that. And if it's not too late, then again, the only way to get out of it is to leave all that stuff aside and not buy into it, and do things for yourself. Um, so I don't know. I personally just buy whatever's affordable. Anyway, so I'm sorry that I keep looking off camera, but it's hard to keep focused on just the camera. Anyway, so the film was Hardwired. I do not recommend it unless you are in the mood to watch a bad movie with big name stars in it inexplicably. Um, I feel bad for Val Kilmer. Cuba Gooding Jr. after he did films like films like what was it, boat boat cruise, and Snow Dogs. Like Snow Dogs, I could at least appreciate. It was a Disney movie, so plenty of pay. Um, and he did an excellent. It was supposed to be like a true adventure story for the whole family, um, based on like actual events that happen. And it was meant to have some humor because it has dogs, so the kids will like that. And it's Cuba Gang Jr., so it would attract an ethnic minority that tends not to always turn out for the Disney family films, I guess. So I don't know. I always saw plenty of African Americans and such, but I think maybe the idea was that they were casting a big name popular actor. The disappointing thing is that Cuba Gooding Jr. is a phenomenal actor, and Val Kilmer is actually very good too. Michael Ironside gets plenty of work, but Val Kilmer and Cuba Gooding Jr. you never see anywhere anymore, and it's because they have to do work like this. Unfortunately, Cuba was in top game back around 2000 because he was in Men of Honor, and uh, and that was a huge success for him. Um, and he was only making like one movie a year, one movie every couple of years or so, unfortunately, and he could be doing so much more even now. Um, I'm trying to think of other work that he's done recently. Um, and the fact is that he could be doing so much more uh, if people were going to him. I don't know what the exact situation is with Cuba Gooding Jr., but he could be doing more. He could be doing better. Val Kilmer is someone I grew up watching. Uh, I I watched his first movie, the Zucker Abrams Zucker film, Top Secret, as a little boy. So, and that was his first film. Then I watched one of his later films, Willow, when it first came out, and loved it. Absolutely adored it. That was a great movie. Never got tired of it, even now. Um, then I saw uh, the movie he did, uh, Real Genius. So. Kind of standard teeny bopper kind of comedy plot. Uh, and, a hokey ending. Um, but then he did The Saint, and I thought, hey, Val Kilmer's back on top. All right. And I thought, if they're going to do the second trilogy of Star Wars movies, have Val Kilmer play Han Solo. They could have done that easily starting in 97 instead of doing the prequel trilogy, or they could have done the prequel trilogy or at the same time as doing the sequel trilogy. If Lucas had let other people have creative control over uh, over the franchise, but he, would not let that happen, even though plenty of authors have written great stories featuring Han Solo and Leia and Luke. And you could have easily had, um, Val Kilmer play Han Solo because they had a similar enough look and feel about them, and he would have just had to dye his hair brown like he did for Willow. Or I forget if he was wearing a wig or extensions or what, but point being, he would have been perfect for the role. And I'm sure that there are other actors that are good for the role, but apparently they're going to tell the story of the later trilogy in an animated format later on, but at the same time, it's also been said that it's not going to happen. I don't care anymore because they've already written the books. So if you want to find out, you can read the books. Anyway, but Val Kilmer could have been doing really great stuff. Um, I like Cuba Gooding Jr. because he is a versatile enough actor that kind of like Denzel Washington or Morgan Freeman, where you can put them in any role. Unfortunately, Morgan Freeman has been kind of typecast as the wise old person, whereas uh, whereas Val Kilmer uh, has been unable to be cast. The last thing that he did um, was a film with Robert Downey Jr. Um, that I think I want to say it was called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but I'm probably way off. Um, anyway, it was a bit of an odd title, but it was with Robert Downey Jr. in it, and you can check it out. It's a really funny, good movie actually, but and it received a lot of good attention. But that was the last time you saw him, and even then he was looking, very overweight, very out of shape. And if he were to get himself in shape to where he could be playing all these different roles, it would be great because goodness knows he probably still has the money where he could afford a gym membership and a personal trainer, or his agency would probably get him a personal trainer. And Cuba is still in great shape and is still a great actor. He's getting on in years, but he could easily be playing all of these different parts because he's a terrific leading man. And I just feel so disappointed that Cuba hasn't come forward as and continued on in his progress. You know, unfortunately, there is the Kirsten Dunst formula for success that it feels like she's kind of given up on ever since she signed on for the Spider-Man franchise, and that kind of went under. What happens is with the Kirsten Dunst formula, and this is something I figured out. Kirsten Dunst plays a funny role and then a serious role, and then another funny role and then a serious role. So, for instance, she was in Interview with the Vampire, and then she was in Jumanji. Then she was in The Virgin Suicides, and she was in some other stuff between that, but she was in The Virgin Suicides, very serious film, and then she was in Bring It On, the movie about cheerleaders. So she alternates between a funny role and a serious role so that you can take her seriously as an actress, but she would still stay in the limelight. And unfortunately, with her involvement with Spider-Man, she had to kind of be on call, I think, for a lot of that. But she also did a really good film called Kaina, which I believe I recommended earlier in this series. That was absolutely fantastically done, and she actually did the English voice, whereas it was originally done in French. And if you haven't checked out Kaina, I recommend you do it. And unfortunately, Cuba broke away from the Kirsten Dunst formula, where funny role, serious role, funny role, serious role. And a lot of actors do that. Between their big projects, they'll star in an independent film that doesn't require them to be on location for very long for filming. Val Kilmer could have been doing something similar, doing independent movies. I know that Kevin Spacey and Danny DeVito and Edward Norton have done plenty of stuff like that. I think around the same time that Edward Norton was shooting American History X, just after that he was in Death to Smoochie, which is a sort of dark comedy. And so you have this successful formula where you alternate between comedy and drama if you're a very versatile actor and a leading man. And then after Death to Smoochie, I believe he was in Edward Norton was in The Heist. I may be totally off base here, but I want to say that they were doing some very successful alternating, and unfortunately you had these franchises come in and kind of take over the actors' lives, and of course Disney kind of Disney and Horatio Sands in Boat Trip, that was the movie, effectively killed Cuba Gooding Jr.'s career because nobody could kind of take him seriously as a serious actor once he did kind of a buddy comedy and then a family adventure where he was playing against animals. One of the first rules of acting: don't play against kids or animals. Don't play with kids or animals in a role, because you'll always be upstaged, and they won't take you seriously because you're just kind of, playing around with them. You're not really acting with another person. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, but anyway, so I've rambled long enough. Hopefully, you found it interesting enough. So that's it for this episode of Film Recommendations. Bye-bye.